The feather is another of the very prominent ancient sacred symbols. It symbolized truth. 3 feathers adorn the crown of Mu. 3 feathers were the ornament on the headpiece of Ra-Mu, the king high priest of Mu. Niven's Mexican stone tablet number 1780. We find these feathers as symbols among the Mayas, the difference in color denoting the rank of the wearer. In Mu, yellow was the color of royalty, blue was for the priesthood, and red for soldiers and nobility. In these ancient times, yellow appears to have been the royal color throughout the world. The dark blue is the mourning color in the Orient today. Research shows that this color was adopted when Mu was sacrificed, and corresponds to the color of her burial shroud, the blue waters of the Pacific Ocean. The feathers worn by the Native American Indian today is a relic, which he has inherited from his forefathers. Whether they know the original meaning of the feather, I cannot say. When worn on the warpath, however, they color the ends of their feathers red, corresponding with the red feathers of the soldiers and nobility of Mu. In Egypt, however, we find even more extensive information about the feather. In the early Egyptian times, as in Mu, a straight feather was used. About the time of Menes, a curled ostrich feather was used in all the new symbolizations. The curled feather is also in the headdress of Osiris and Ma'at, and in the Great Hall of Truth. An ostrich feather is shown as being weighed against the heart of the deceased, the feather symbolizing truth. Legend says that this feather was selected to symbolize truth because a puff of wind blows it away. Truth is just as liable and easy to be frightened away as the feather is to be blown away. The ancient name for the feather was Kukun, Ku, or Kuk. Among the Mayas of North America, we still find a serpent called Kukulkan, which translated to Kan, king, Kuk, feather, and Ul, covered, so that a free translation would mean the king of serpents, which was covered with feathers. This corresponds with the Quiche Maya as recorded in their sacred book, the Popol Vuh. Pillars, as sacred symbols, are of an extremely ancient origin. My personal opinion is that they date back to the first temple ever erected for the worship of the Infinite One, and that was more than 70,000 years ago. The pillar is one of the multitude of symbols which symbolizes the 4 great creative forces. They were first used at the doorway or the entrance to the temple. They were specialized in their construction and shapes. From various old tablets and fallen ruins, I've reconstructed the pair as they were erected 20,000 years ago. The pillar on the left was a square and capped with the glyph strength. The right-hand pillar was round and capped with the glyph, which in general means established, built up, by extension, finished, accomplished, depending on how and where they were used. Both pillars were in 4 sections. They correspond with the 4 great primary forces, the great 4 gods, etc. The pillar cross. The 4 arms of this cross are in the shape like the ancient glyph for pillar. Connecting them all is shown the great source, their creator. The upper pillar or arm of the cross is capped with the 2 glyphs for strength and for establish. Thus, this cross reads, the pillars have been established in strength. Temple torch with 2 pillars. Niven's Mexican stone tablet number 50 is over 12,000 years old. This temple has a dedication over the center arc, the hieratic letter H, and the alphabet of Mu. This was the alphabetical symbol of the 4 creative forces, so this temple was dedicated to the great 4 primary forces. Below are shown the 2 pillars. Each one has 4 sections. The numeral 4 in Uyghur form corresponding to the 4 primary forces. The left-hand pillar is capped with the glyph strength, and the right one with the glyph establish. The ground plan of this temple, which is on another temple, shows the left-hand pillar to be the square and the right one to be round. The very old written record, dating back to about 11,000 years, comes from the Greek and refers to the pillars of the temple dedicated to Poseidon of Atlantis. The foregoing, I think, clearly establishes the antiquity of the pillars as sacred symbols, with their shapes and meanings. I shall now pass on to the Egyptians of more recent time, taking the period of about 1000 to 4500 BC. Egyptian pillars. This is a group of pillars taken from the Book of the Dead and various Egyptian papyri. By these it will be seen that the Egyptians did not adhere to the patterns and details of the ancients, but rather made a display of their imagination and artistry. Pillars came to Egypt with both tides of colonists. The eastern line brought them, and the western line brought them, and between the two, new conceptions of what pillars ought to be developed. The Egyptians called them tat pillars. They are, however, better known throughout the world as totem pillars. The Egyptians called one pillar Tat, which in their language means in strength. The other pillar they called Tatu, which means to establish, and when conjoined, in strength this place is established forever. The Egyptians considered the figure of Tat an emblem for strength and stability. It will be noticed that all the pillars in this group carry 4 horizontal bars, in this way symbolizing the 4 great primary forces, or, as they were more prone to call them, the 4 great gods. This is the entrance to Amenti, taken from a papyrus Anana, one of the most beautiful papyri I've ever seen. In Egyptian mythology, 2 Tats form the entrance to Tatu. Tatu is the gateway to the region where the mortal soul is blended with an immortal soul and established in the mysteries of Amenti forever and ever. In the porch or entrance to King Solomon's temple, 2 special pyramids were erected. Kings chapter 7 verses 21-22. And he set up pillars in the porch of the temple. And he set up the right pillar, and he called the name thereof Jacob. And he set up the left pillar, and called the name thereof Boaz. At the entrance of the King Solomon's temple, and of the Osirian Great Hall of the Truth, 2 pillars were erected standing perpendicularly. In each case they have identical meanings, language considered, with identically the same names. Beyond this ornamentation on the pillars, lilywort are also the same, showing that King Solomon's pillars were a complete copy of the pillars of the Great Hall of Truth. And while both changed the pattern of pillars, they both retained their original meaning. That is, they symbolized the work of the 4 great primary forces. Let's take a look at some other ancient cultures which use the symbol of the pillar. The North American Indians. The Indians of our northwestern states and western Canada erect totem poles and hold ceremonies at their base. I have been unable to get anything about them except legend, but these legends and carvings on totem poles strongly confirm the fact that their forefathers of these Indians came from Mu, and that part of the motherland where the bird was their symbol for the creator. The Maoris of New Zealand had a common practice to erect totem poles or pillars at the main entrance of their villages. The Karangs of Java. Forbes, in writing, says, in Java is a tribe called the Karangs, supposed to be descendants of the aborigines of the island, whose old men and youths 4 times a year repair secretly in procession to a sacred grove in the dense forest, the old men to worship and the youth to see and to learn the mysteries of their forefathers. In this grove are the ruins of terraces laid out in quadrilateral enclosures, the boundaries of which are marked by blocks of stone, or fixed on the ground. Here and there on terraces are prominent monuments, erect pillars, and especially noteworthy, a pillar erect within a square. Here these despised and secluded people follow the rites and customs that have been handed down to them from their forefathers through vastly remote ages, about 12,000 years, repeating with superstitious awe a litany which they do not understand or comprehend. This very litany is found in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Israelites in Egypt. While in Egypt, the Israelites had 2 pillars of red brick at the entrance of their poor little temples. In many of their synagogues today, they erect 2 pillars at the entrance, and say they symbolize the legendary pillars of fire and smoke that accompanied them during the Exodus. What did their Egyptian pillars symbolize? Atlantis. Plato, the Greek philosopher, informs us that the people of Atlantis gathered every 5th and 6th year alternatively with sacrifices of bulls, and swore to observe the sacred inscriptions carved on the pillars of the temple. Toronto MS. I found the following mistranslations on the Toronto MS plate. This has been translated, Can the King. The correct translation is, the 4 pillars of the earth. This is the hieratic letter M in the Motherland's alphabet, the alphabetical symbol for mother, earth, land, etc. This, or this, is the symbol for pillar, when the actual pillar is not shown. Therefore, this glyph reads, the 4 pillars at the 4 corners of the earth. The whole of this plate is a mistranslation. The 8 Roads to Heaven. The 8 Roads to Heaven was a religious symbolical teaching which I first found in the cosmogonic diagram of Mu, which attests to its great antiquity. In this cosmogonic diagram, it was used to show man how he must live on earth to be prepared to pass into the world beyond when his call came. The 8 Roads to Heaven was not an actual conception, it was a symbolic teaching, religious in character. These special teachings were unquestionably universal, as they are found among ancient people throughout the world. Such form of teaching must have been very popular since there were so many designs of symbols for it. Every ancient people appear to have